So you know that feeling when your brain just feels like popcorn.
Popcorn brain. Yeah.
Exactly. Like every single thought is a kernel just popping off all at once.
Right, and it leaves you feeling completely scattered.
Yeah, completely. And, things like planning, even just managing your time, they start to feel totally impossible.
That analogy is so accurate, and it's actually the perfect place for us to start. We have to reframe this right away.
Reframe how?
Well, ADHD isn't a character flaw. It's not about being lazy or, not trying hard enough. It's a fundamental neurological difference in how the brain manages its key chemicals.
Okay, let's get into that, the neurobiology of it, because that seems to be the foundation for everything else we're going to talk about today.
It really is. We're mainly talking about two major neurotransmitters here.
Okay.
So first, you have dopamine. And dopamine is tied to basically everything involving motivation, reward, and attention. When that system is dysregulated, which is what we see in ADHD, any task that doesn't have an immediate reward or, a spark of interest, it feels impossible, genuinely, like pushing a boulder uphill.
So if a task isn't urgent or new or super interesting, the brain just says, nope, even if it's really important.
Exactly. And then the second chemical is norepinephrine.
And that one's 4.
That one is vital for alertness, for sustained focus, and for impulse control. So the differences in how both of those are regulated, that's what leads directly to the classic executive function challenges, the time blindness, the trouble organizing, all of it.
Okay. So our mission for this deep dive is to cut through all that confusion, that brain noise, and ground ourselves in what actually works.
All right.
We've gone through the clinical reviews, the community discussions, and pulled out the most actionable strategies from self-help guides that are really tailored for the adult ADHD experience. We're offering you a shortcut to capability.
And to get there, we absolutely have to start with the complex reality of comorbidity.
Meaning that ADHD rarely travels alone.
Rarely. The sources show that something like 70% of adults with ADHD also struggle with another mental health issue.
70% is a huge number.
It's massive. It could be bipolar disorder or substance use, but for the vast majority, it's anxiety and depression.
And the stats on those are pretty staggering. We're talking up to half of ADHD patients experiencing anxiety. And depression could affect more than 50% in some studies.
And here's the insight that gets missed for years, sometimes decades. The anxiety and depression are often secondary symptoms.
So they're not the root cause.
Exactly. They're the psychological fallout from living with untreated ADHD. People will tell you, I felt so anxious because my brain was always on, or I was depressed because I felt like a failure for never being able to finish anything.
That failure loop is just brutal. And it explains why so many people get shuffled through different misdiagnoses for years, right?
Absolutely. They get told it's generalized anxiety or treatment-resistant depression, OCD, even bipolar 2, before someone finally spots ADHD as the engine driving it all. It's an incredibly isolating journey.
It really is. So for anyone listening who's, hearing this and it's clicking for them, is there a good starting point before seeing a professional?
There is. A really great tool is the Adult ADHD Self-Report Scale. It's the ASRS V1.1 Symptom Checklist.
Okay.
It's a screening tool, so it's not a diagnosis, but it helps you score how often you experience certain symptoms. Things like losing things or having trouble finishing tasks. It just gives you solid data to start that conversation with a clinician.
That's a really helpful, concrete step. Now, what about treatment? When a clinician sees both ADHD and, say, severe anxiety, how do they decide what to tackle first?
Well, the clinical consensus is to prioritize whatever is most severe and functionally impairing.
So if the anxiety is so bad you can't leave the house, you treat that first.
You have to. But, and this is a vital point, when you effectively treat the underlying ADHD, the symptoms of that secondary anxiety or depression often improve dramatically.
Because you're treating the root cause.
You're treating the root cause. The functional failures decrease. And so a lot of that shame and anxiety it lessens on its own.
That makes perfect sense. And before we move on, there's a really critical warning from the sources we need to highlight.
Yes. This comes from a consulting psychiatrist, and it's a stark one. You should never take stimulant medication without a thorough assessment.
And that assessment should ideally include looking at the brain, right? Through imaging or at least a deep clinical history.
Absolutely. To make sure the treatment is right for your specific brain chemistry and won't make some other undiagnosed condition worse.
That's such a critical boundary. And speaking of boundaries, let's shift from the clinical side to foundational self-care.
Okay.
We've got a list of 5 things that experts strongly advise against. These aren't just suggestions. They're more like hard rules to stabilize the ADHD brain.
They are, because
Yeah.
each of these things actively destabilizes those systems we just talked about, the dopamine and norepinephrine. They're non-negotiables if you want to build a stable life.
Okay, let's run through them. Number one, we just said it. Taking meds without that full assessment.
Crucial. Number 2 is self-medicating with alcohol or marijuana.
Right. 3 is playing excess video games. 4 is eating a lot of sugar. And 5, and this is a big one, staying up late and disrespecting sleep.
Let's talk about why, because just hearing a list doesn't make it stick.
Let's take numbers 2 and 3 together, the self-medicating and the gaming.
Okay.
Both of those activities flood the brain with a huge instant hit of dopamine, but it's completely unsustainable.
And the sources defined excessive gaming as more than half an hour, which I have to say sounds pretty strict.
It does sound strict, but there's a reason for it. It's about the hyper-focus and that immediate reward loop.
Right?
An hour of an exciting video game gives you this massive dopamine rush. And what that does is it makes the boring, necessary tasks like laundry or your taxes feel 10 times more boring afterwards.
So it hijacks your reward system completely. And it makes it even harder to function in the real world. That 30-minute boundary is a structured way to keep your reward system from getting totally overstimulated.
That reframes it completely. It's not a moral judgment. It's about protecting your baseline ability to function. What about sugar? How does that fit in?
Sugar causes these rapid spikes and crashes in blood sugar. And those crashes have a profound impact on focus, mood, and energy, all things that are already a challenge.
So if your energy is constantly crashing, your self-regulation crashes right along with it.
You got it. Stable blood sugar is critical for focus. And then finally, sleep.
The one that's always the first to go.
Always. But the brain does its most critical cleanup work overnight. A lack of sleep directly tanks your working memory, your emotional regulation, and your attention. If you're already low on those regulatory chemicals, not sleeping ensures you start the day with an empty tank.
So the real self-care starts with managing energy, sleep, nutrition, and maybe some gentle exercise. You build the foundation first.
You have to build that stable base before you can even think about tackling the more complicated tasks.
Which is the perfect segue, because that solid foundation is essential before we tackle the two biggest obstacles for so many adults with ADHD: task paralysis and mental clutter.
Ah, yes. The infamous doom piles.
I think everyone can relate to that feeling of starting 5 things and finishing none, or just feeling like you're drowning in those piles.
The doom pile is a perfect metaphor for task paralysis.
Yeah.
It isn't laziness. It's your brain looking at a huge, overwhelming task, calculating the effort required, and the motivation circuitry it fries. It shorts out.
So how do you trick your brain into just starting?
You have to find a low barrier entry point, something that gives you a quick win. And this is where the guides talk about the power of the 5-minute task.
Okay, the 5-minute task.
The goal is to break a huge chore, like filing all your papers, into a tiny, doable chunk. The task isn't file everything. The task is put away 3 pieces of paper.
Oh, I see. So it's a hack to create momentum. You give your brain a tiny immediate win, which delivers that little burst of dopamine just for starting.
Precisely. And that makes the next 5 minutes feel just a little bit easier. You're trading overwhelm for simplicity.
So that's the physical clutter. But what about the mental clutter, the emotional side of this?
This is so important and so often overlooked. We're talking about really deep issues here, like shame, low self-esteem, and something called rejection sensitivity dysphoria.
Let's pause on that one, on RSD, because that can be a huge, debilitating part of this. What is it exactly?
RSD is an intense, almost physically painful emotional reaction to perceived rejection or criticism.
Even if the rejection isn't real.
Even if it's just imagined. Because of how the brain is processing emotions, the reaction can feel sudden and completely disproportionate, and it leads to these deep feelings of shame and inadequacy.
Which explains why the sources talk so much about emotional decluttering, using that analogy of a messy room for a mind full of unprocessed stress.
It's a great metaphor. And the main tool they offer for that is journaling, but not the perfectionist Dear Diary kind.
Just a brain dump.
Just a brain dump. A safe place to get all the anxieties and frustrations out onto a page without worrying about spelling or grammar. Just get it out.
And for anyone who finds a blank page just as overwhelming as a doom pile, the guided journals can really help with that. They give you prompts and structure, which cuts down on the decision fatigue.
Right. The goal isn't to write a masterpiece. It's just to offload that mental burden so you can start to see patterns. Like, oh, I only feel this way after I've skipped my morning walk.
Okay, so moving from that internal world to the external one, How do all these things, the fast brain, the impulse control, the RSD, how do they show up in our relationships?
Well, they create unique social challenges for sure. Everything from just maintaining contact with people to active listening, and of course the big one, oversharing.
Oversharing seems to come from a really genuine place, a desire to connect. But the impulse control just isn't there.
It's not. But let's start with interrupting, because that's a really common one.
Okay.
The guides suggest simple physical tricks to act as an anchor for your thought, like gently pinching your fingers together or taking one slow, deep breath to hold the thought until it's your turn.
A physical break for a neurological accelerator. I like these.
Exactly. And for better engagement, there's the ping pong analogy.
Right, for active listening.
Yeah, you're not just waiting for your turn to serve. You're actively volleying back and forth. You're building on what your partner said, asking questions. It's a rally, not a series of serves.
And to manage that impulse to overshare, what's the tool for that?
It's called the mental stoplight. It's a way to insert a pause.
Okay.
So you feel the urge to share something big. Red means just stop, pause. Yellow is the quick internal check. Is this relevant? Is this too much detail? And green means go ahead.
That little pause can make all the difference. Now, what about just keeping friendships going when executive function makes even sending a text feel hard?
The advice is all about systems. Remove the brain power needed. Use timers, calendar reminders, schedule check-in with friends right next to your dentist appointment.
You can also use the 2-minute rule here, right? If it takes less than 2 minutes to reply to that text, just do it now.
Do it now. Don't let it become a text doom pile. And this is critical normalized, low-energy communication. Meaning sending a meme or an emoji is so much better than sending nothing. It maintains the connection without needing a huge amount of mental effort when you're drained.
All of these tailored strategies lead us really nicely into our final section, which is about the tech tools that are actually designed to work with a neurodivergent brain.
Yes, because most generic to-do list apps are built for neurotypical brains, and that's why they fail. They're either too simple and you can't adapt them, or they're so complex you get overwhelmed and just abandon them.
So we distilled 4 key criteria for an ADHD-friendly app.
Right. First, it has to have simplicity, but with adaptability. Second, it needs to integrate time management, like time blocking. Third, it has to reduce decision fatigue. And fourth, and this is maybe the most important, it has to celebrate accomplishment.
For that dopamine hit.
For that essential dopamine reward.
Okay, let's spotlight a few of the top apps. First up is Amazing Marvin. This one seems to be the best for customization.
It's like a whole toolbox. You can pick and choose strategies like procrastination warnings. But its signature feature is the little marshmallow mascot.
The mascot.
Yeah, it's a little character that does a dance or gives you praise when you complete a task. It ticks that dopamine box immediately. It gives the brain that hit it needs to register success.
I do have to ask, though, does relying on something like a dancing mascot risk undermining intrinsic motivation in the long run?
That's a fair question. And the argument is that for the ADHD brain, that intrinsic motivation switch often needs an external jolt just to get started. The mascot is like a set of training wheels. It helps build the habit of completion until the feeling of success becomes its own reward.
That makes sense. Training the brain to find the reward. Okay, next up is Tick-Tick, which is geared toward focusing.
Tick-Tick is great because it has things like the Eisenhower matrix built right in, which cuts down on decision fatigue. But its killer feature is the built-in Pomodoro timer.
So you can time your focus sessions.
Exactly. And you can estimate task time, and at the end of the day, it gives you a progress report. Seeing what you actually got done is such a powerful antidote to that feeling of failure.
Okay, and for someone who really needs to see their tasks on their calendar, there's Sunsama.
Sunsama is all about time management. It forces you into a daily planning flow and then lets you drag and drop tasks right into time blocks on your calendar.
The only catch being you have to be pretty good at estimating how long things will take.
That's the one caveat. If your time estimation is off, the whole system can kind of fall apart.
And for those of us who have notes and tasks scattered across 100 different apps, there's Twos.
Twos is brilliant because it combines notes and tasks in one simple feed. You just type, and it uses natural language to figure out what it is. And it has automatic task rollover. Anything you don't finish today just automatically moves to tomorrow's list. No more migrating to-do lists.
Finally, for people who really need gamification to stay motivated, we have Finch.
Finch is the ultimate self-care app in disguise. You take care of a little virtual pet, A burb.
Our burbs.
A burb. And you earn rainbow stones for completing your real-world goals. It reframes your to-do list as an act of nurturing yourself and your digital companion.
So what stands out across all of this, from the clinical advice to the tech tools, is that one big theme.
Right.
True self-care for ADHD isn't about these huge, sweeping changes. It's about small, intentional, tailored strategies that work with your brain, not against it.
It's a complete shift, away from feeling broken or judged and toward feeling understood and capable. It's about building a life that actually fits your brain.
Exactly. The goal is empowerment, learning to embrace your traits and maybe even turn perceived obstacles into strengths.
Which brings us perfectly to our final thought for you. A lot of people have heard of spoon theory for energy management.
Right.
The self-care material for neurodivergence takes that a step further with a concept called the neurodivergent spoon drawer.
That's a great image. We want you to think about this. Instead of seeing your energy as one big pool of spoons, imagine you have different drawers. A drawer for physical spoons, one for mental spoons, one for social spoons.
And how might that shift your awareness, knowing that a big social event drains your social spoon drawer in a completely different way than a complex work project drains your mental spoon drawer? How could that change the way you plan your day and your self-care? Recognizing that energy isn't just one thing might be the key to sustainable success.